Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya and I'm the daughter.
This guy got on AI. He put in all this information about himself.
Sounds like me these days.
Once he had that all in there, he thought, I'll ask AI, how long am I going to live? AI came back and said, you got 4 more minutes.
What?
That's what he said. What? 4 minutes? So he says, is there anything I could do? AI said, you could boil an egg.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
And why is that?
It is June Pride Month. And
Yes.
normally we sing that song in December. But for me, ever since I came out 10 years ago, June is by far my favorite month. It is, of course, Pride Month, so it's the month that there's lots of festivals, especially if you're by a big city, that celebrate Pride, LGBTQ, and all of the other identities that fall under that rainbow umbrella. June is also the month that gay marriage was legalized by the Supreme Court. That was a big, big deal.
Oh, yeah, sure it was.
And that happened to be the same year that I transitioned, the same month, the same week. No, it wasn't the same week, but it was the same month. I transitioned towards the beginning of June. And so I was just learning what is this whole community about. And it was about 2 weeks in or 3 weeks into my transition that the Supreme Court ruling came back. And for me, I was just figuring everything out. And it was like I was Dorothy walking out of the house and all of a sudden everything was in color.
Sure.
And that was the very first thing, the big news event that came up that was on my radar. So that was a big deal for me.
That was your total focus.
Yeah.
All right, I'll admit that was a stretch.
And then, of course, June is my birthday month.
That's right.
There are so many reasons why we celebrate June as Pride Month. Dad, do you know the reason why June got started as Pride Month to begin with?
I think it was because of an issue in New York City. Would I be right about that?
You are sure right.
The Stonewall Uprising.
Yes, so the Stonewall riots.
And it's really led by 2 women, Martha Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Martha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera were both trans women. Yes, now Martha Johnson, you'll hear some revisionists trying to say, no, she never viewed herself as a woman. There are times where you hear her call herself a man or use he pronouns, but it was a different time when there weren't out trans women in the same way that there are right now. And she was in that liminal space, finding this community where it was the only place that you could feel welcome.
I should add, by the way, that protest at Stonewall was toward the end of June, June 28th.
Yes.
And it goes back to 1969.
Yes.
The year I got married.
Perfect. In those days, the police officers would harass gay bars all the time.
Yes.
Because it was technically illegal to be gay. I don't know what the illegal part was, but there was just a view that here are a bunch of hoodlums that are up to no good doing whatever they're doing. And they finally got really angry and said, forget it. We're done with all of this. We are going to stand up. And they decided they were going to start throwing stuff. And all of a sudden, it turned from a local raid that they would do periodically. I always have in my mind, I don't know what it was really like, but I imagine it probably felt a lot like Prohibition, where the cops would come in and do a raid because you were doing something.
Imagine.
Yeah, you were doing something a little back alley kind of, like you had your little speakeasy, but it was a gay speakeasy, which all of the gay folks said, give me the gay speakeasy. I want to go there. But once they stood up, it became major news. And people said, hey, wait a minute. And especially the gay community said, That's right. This is wrong. They should not be able to come in and harass us for being who we are. And that became the moment. And then at the 1-year anniversary, they said, we're going to march. And it was very much a protest movement saying this is wrong, what people are doing to us. And from there on out, every single year, they would do a march. And then from there, as more and more people started to come on board and recognize this is wrong, the way that we've been treating the community.
Well, and I think the protest wasn't just about raiding that place, but it became a lot more than that. It became more like healthcare rights and disparities in other areas and anti-LGBTQ legislation that was going on.
Right.
And youth homelessness and a whole lot more. But those were big, hot issues.
So you figure back in the 70s when all this is going on, it was primarily just, why are people treating us so badly? And so then you've got that whole 10 years of a lot of righteous indignation, just feeling very upset about this is not okay how society is treating us. And then you get into the 80s where we had a new reason to be upset, and that was because people were completely overlooking the AIDS crisis or using it to demonize the gay community again in another way. So there was this second round of people that were literally dying, and our community was being decimated.
So why is this a Pride Month? Why isn't it June 28th, Pride Day?
Dad, there was so much that we needed to talk about and to celebrate. So imagine this, that you're having a whole Pride event, bigger than just a day. So it turns into the whole weekend. You organize the parade, you organize everything else. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of things happening. And sometimes one weekend works better than another weekend. It really just turned into, we're kind of taking June as the whole space. And people realize that visibility is so important, because not everybody has access to the same kind of celebration. So by stretching Pride across the entire month, a lot more people, especially those like me that are in a more rural area or in a more marginalized community, have opportunities to actually get where we need to go and be a part of Pride.
Well, that makes sense to me. I mean, Pride Month exists because LGBTQ people have always existed, right? They've
sure
always
have,
been. So,
yes.
Pride Month makes sense. And because it makes sense, and you want to have enough flexibility for everybody to be able to participate, to show what they're doing, and participate in various communities, I get the idea of a whole month. It's time to be unapologetic, maybe to reflect on how far we've come, and to recommit that there's still a lot to do.
Right. Now, a lot of Pride celebrations end up happening, I shouldn't say a lot, but sometimes will happen outside of June. For instance, I went to college in Madison, and they chose to host their Pride, I want to say in August.
Oh.
So a few cities here and there will do that, because the idea is we want to have Pride. Pride can be a year-round thing.
Of course.
But the idea with taking June as Pride Month is it's a time where we can kind of speak out to the larger culture and say, we really would like you to listen to our issues and listen to what's important, because it really matters. It's really expanded to include the entire LGBTQIA plus spectrum. So it's a much bigger topic than just gay and lesbian. So you're talking about transgender. It's also another time to talk about, say, intersex people. You can talk about the asexual spectrum or aromantic. We had my friend Will Church on here on this episode talking about asexuality. You can go back and listen to that. It's a time to talk about all of those issues. And so especially for somebody that doesn't have this on their radar very much, we've used June as an opportunity to say, this is important.
I can understand why they would do it other than just June as well. I think of veterans organizations, and they have, yes, of course, we have Memorial Day, and we have Veterans Day. Memorial Day, of course, in the end of May, and Veterans Day in November. And that's always November 11th at 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And that is because that was the signing of the treaty at the end of World War I. Another interesting fact.
Sure. And just like it's important to honor veterans all year round,
Yes.
it's important to keep in mind the LGBTQ issues all year round because they don't go away.
No.
No.
As a matter of fact, we have to keep fighting all the time. Once you think you've made a lot of strides, then suddenly something pops up somewhere in a legislature, somewhere in some capital of some state that creates a problem, or maybe it's in Congress, and you have to go back and refight again.
These days, pride is more important than it's ever been since I've come out. You know, when I originally came out as transgender back in 2015, it was a very different time. And now here we are where a lot of people feel politically empowered to be anti-LGBTQ again. And so it's more important than ever that we have time and spaces where we can come together and know that there are allies and other people like us so that we can know that we're safe and that we have community.
Pride is a month of celebration, but it's also a month of commemoration, and it honors the uprising in New York City in 1969 and a variety of other things. So I understand why they do it all month long, and I certainly am a supporter of that. When we come back, we'll talk about how Pride is celebrated during the month of June in large cities, urban areas, suburban areas, and the rural communities.
I am Mark Ziemer, a listener and supporter of Transcendent. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 45 years, and oh, what a journey that was for me to understand the LGBTQIA community and what that meant. I was so not understanding and hurtful. So this podcast is incredibly important to really educate and understand and to hold relationships together. So I urge you to consider listening, of course, but also supporting. You can go to transcendent.com and click on the heart with a support button. You can give as little as $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Important for all of us on this journey of understanding, keeping relationships together, truly being people of love.
So we move to the big city. How is Pride celebrated in the big city? I don't know about you. I think about packed streets in New York City, rainbow confetti flying around in San Francisco, celebrating with a Grand Marshal parade in Los Angeles. They've got Pride events. They have sponsors that fund them. They have community organizations and mass turnouts. It's where visibility really matters, and they really do it upright. And that's what we think of when we think of Pride events during Pride Month.
That was actually my very first Pride, and probably yours as well, but it probably didn't mean so much to you, so you didn't think so much about it. But I remember when we went out to San Francisco when I was in high school.
Yes.
My uncle was getting married, and it happened to be during the Pride celebration.
I remember that too.
And we drove right through, and I remember feeling like, wow, first of all, this is really exciting, and oh, it feels a little bit countercultural, which I was drawn to the countercultural part, but in a way that at that time we were still figuring, it was okay to make fun of people, and everything was, you would still crack gay jokes at high school and those kinds of things. That was the community that I was in. And so coming through, all of a sudden I realized, first of all, there's a lot of people that just seem really happy. And I felt like this is not my community, but yet there was part of it where I felt like there was a draw, and I couldn't explain what the draw was.
So that must have been June of 90 or June of 91.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems about right. We can find out and go back, but yeah, it was. And I remember we were driving through and I was sitting in the back seat, and there was a guy off about 100 feet away, and he looked over and he caught my eye. He saw me as the high school kid sitting in the back of the family car, and he grabbed his boyfriend and he gave him a big kiss, and then he turned and he looked right back at me again, and I smiled and I laughed.
I remember that too. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I always thought of as pride.
What's really cool about those pride events in the big cities, and they don't have to be that big, smaller cities like Milwaukee or other cities of that size, they have big pride events as well. It is security and numbers for one thing. That's a pretty big deal. You can go down there and there's so many people that are participating in that. I would say probably 55 to 60% are LGBTQ plus, and the rest are the allies. There's a lot of allies involved in that. And in fact, I look forward to being part of that as an ally and being involved in it. To see those people there supporting it says this is how America thinks.
Even today, most pride events will have some angry person outside, probably with a megaphone.
Yep.
Wearing some t-shirt with an obnoxious sign on it, holding some large sign about going to hell. And I remember how important it is every single year to have allies. I remember marching in a parade about 3 years ago, that when the parade was starting, we went right past this guy, and he was vicious. He was just mean. And I thought to myself, what is motivating this guy? Those people are still out there. So why does pride matter? Because those people are there. Why do allies matter? Because we're facing that all the time. This is our chance for you to rise up and say, I stand with these people. These are my people. And to get to them, you have to go through me.
That's how I feel.
Now picture this. You're queer, you're trans in a town of 1,000 people. The local church is still preaching against, quote, lifestyles. The nearest pride event is 2 counties over. You feel like you've never even met another person in the LGBTQ plus community. What does pride mean at that point? Oftentimes, we live very isolated. We feel like there's nobody else like us around. Usually we'll seek out people, but they're few and far between. For me, I do know a few trans people, but it's pretty rare that I see them. Actually, there was one trans guy in my graduating class of 52 people. We both transitioned about the same time. It was in the same year. And I always joke that our town is so small, we didn't want to throw off the demographics, so we just traded.
He was a guest on this show.
Yes, Vic Civic. You can go back and listen to that one. Pride matters as much or more so for us in rural communities. And in fact, this year, I think what I'm going to do is during the month of June, I'm going to fly a pride flag.
Sure.
I don't think I'm going to do it year-round. Many people do, which is great. For me, I want to make sure that everybody that walks past my house or drives past my house sees that flag and sees that there are people here that are part of the community. And there are people for whom it's safe. I can tell you that anytime I do see other people having those out, how much it matters to me. How much safer I feel, and how I feel like okay, I'm not alone. Rural spaces, it almost matters more than those big cities.
Well, one thing interesting about you coming out in a small town, we did a podcast about that. That here you are in a town of 1,000 people, and what was it like? Well, interestingly enough, it was just fine. In a small town, everybody knows everybody, and if I remember how the podcast went, you were pretty comfortable with the whole thing, and still are.
I was, and yes, I am. Thankfully, our town is a really good town where people look out for one another. I don't know that would be the case in all parts of the country. I've heard of a lot of other folks that feel like they have a really difficult time.
Yes.
But it matters a lot, too, on how you approach people.
I think so.
Yeah, so for me, I always assume the best of people, and that makes it a lot easier. But it's easy for me to assume the best of people because I had 40 years where nobody was coming against me. So I don't approach with that kind of fear and the kind of years and years of being beat down. But for somebody that was a very obviously gay boy growing up, being teased all through school, rural communities can be exceptionally difficult. For a lesbian girl growing up, especially if she's stereotypical lesbian and everybody's making fun and they're always criticizing and telling her that she doesn't belong, she doesn't measure up. Rural communities can be very difficult.
But when you were in school, you graduated with was it a class of 52?
I believe it was 52.
50, just like a deck of cards.
Yeah.
And because you had a class of 52, it was a lot smaller. I graduated with a class of 535.
Wow.
There were 530.
Yeah.
I didn't know all the kids in
that's
my
probably
class.
much more normal. Most people come from a class about that big.
Maybe. I don't really know. There's a lot of small schools in big cities too. But what I think is different is in a school of my class being 535, you don't know everybody and everybody doesn't know you. Therefore, there are actually a lot more bullies out there that have never seen you before, and if they didn't like what you're doing or how you are, they can be a lot rougher. But in a school with only 52 kids where everybody knows everybody, and one of those people was in your class for a whole year at one point because you had 13 years of school there, everybody is going to get along. You might have one person that could be a problem, but you got 29 other people in the same class that aren't going to accept it.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I feel like for people that get very upset when they get bullied,
Yeah.
what people sometimes see is only the person getting upset, and they don't see the lead up and the bullying. Or they might, but they close their eyes to it. So you can certainly get that. It just depends a lot. For me, it was pretty easy because, first of all, I wasn't out. And secondly, my temperament has always been to get along with everybody.
Yeah.
So that's made it a lot easier for me. But I don't want to say that it's easy for everybody. That's why we have Pride Month. That's exactly why we do this.
Sure. So when you listen to this podcast, you might think back on your own class and how big it was or how small it was, and how did that affect you? And was it easier or was it more difficult in a class of a larger size or a smaller size? We'd like to hear from you. If you have a story about that, send it to us at trandysended@gmail.com. We'd like to hear from you about that. That would be interesting. Bria, in your small town, how do you celebrate Pride Month? You just mentioned one thing. This year you're going to put out a pride flag.
Right. The other things that we'll do, there's not a celebration per se in our town, but in the next big town over, there is a big one. It's not a huge one, but there is a pride that happens about 25 miles away at the closest university town.
Mm-hmm.
And I will definitely go to that. or I can go about 40 miles to a larger, I wouldn't call it a city, but it's a larger community.
60,000.
And they have more events that they will do as well. And of course, this year is good because in our community, this is the first year that we have our P-Flag group started. So we'll be doing some things together with the P-Flag group. There are more opportunities this year than there were in the past.
Yes, that's right. And you've got more people who are allies that will join in as well. So I think it's going to be very effective for us. I think it's comfortable.
Right.
Which is great.
Now, we've talked about then the two big areas, the urban areas and the rural areas, but of course, then you've got that in between. What about suburban areas? Suburban pride can oftentimes feel more like a blend. It's close enough to urban energy, so it feels like it's inclusive, but it's not always bold enough to be fully affirming. So events might be more family-oriented. They generally are a lot more cautious. They're focused on toleration over liberation.
Mm-hmm. It's a little risky.
Yeah, that's it. It's a little risky.
Yeah.
Especially for people of color.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yes, and the suburbs, I think, have a real issue with that in general, more so than rural areas. In rural areas, you just got kind of whoever was born here and whoever has moved here because of whatever has brought them to this area. But in a suburb, you've got people that could choose to live in a lot of places. And oftentimes you've got people that are choosing a much more homogenous community. And you can get sometimes more explicit racism in that area and more explicit homophobia. You put those two together,
Yeah.
or transphobia, and things can be really difficult for anyone who is not the quote-unquote right person in the community.
That can be difficult.
Yeah. So there are pride events in more suburban areas, and that's why it matters more than ever to be visible and be out in those places. Of course, this year we're going to be doing some things in our area to go beyond just official pride things and try to show ourselves and our faces, hosting tables at some local events as well, especially in this year's political climate. I want to make sure that people see me. I don't want to be the person that's hiding, because I know that I'm generally pretty safe. But not everybody feels that way, and for good reasons.
Right.
So I want to make sure that they know there are other trans people here. And if you feel scared or you feel like there's nobody like me here, I want them to know I'm here and I'm out.
Urban pride is probably about celebration. Rural pride might be about survival. And both are important, both are necessary, and both are valid. Maybe if we're in a rural area, maybe just having a pride sticker on the back of a pickup truck is something that is going to send a little bit of a message to somebody. And it all helps. Everything we do that really shows our support begins to resonate with people, that they begin to understand that this support group and this LGBTQ group is bigger than I thought.
Yes.
I did mention one time, not long ago, on one of the podcasts, I have a friend down in Texas where we went there. I had him listen to one of the podcasts, and he listened about halfway through, and he shut it off. And I said, "You didn't listen to it all?" "No," he said, "I don't know anybody like that." And of course, I said, "Do you know anybody that's left-handed?" "Oh, sure. It's the same percentage. But it's actually considerably larger because it's the same percentage that's LGBTQ. Then you have all of the allies along with it. So it's really double the size of left-handers. How about that?
That's good. And pride is important. No matter where you are, no matter where you celebrate pride, see what events there are around you. And if there's not anything, this would be a great time to start something. Put up a flyer and say, hey, we're going to do an informal pride event at the local park. Or whatever. Think about it. Maybe have some people over. Have a pride celebration of your own. Or find something that you can go to. Find a way to be a part of it. Whether you are an ally or you are part of the community, pride matters.
It certainly does.
Just like this podcast matters. And we're grateful to have you coming back here week after week. We're trying to give you really good content that can help you to live a life as a more authentic ally or as a more authentic LGBTQ plus person and improve your relationships so that you can be everything that you were meant to be.
I'd like to put a little plug in for the commercial we had this time. It was Pastor Zemer. And if you listen to his statements, he said how he used to be hurtful and how he is so supportive now and how meaningful that is, not only for him, but for all of us and for all of his parishioners. It is a very, very strong statement. And he's asking if you could help support this podcast, which I'm asking too. Raya and I have expenses. In fact, they tend to be growing. And if you can support us for even as little as $3 a month, we would appreciate it. All you have to do is click on support, and it's very easy to do. You can cancel anytime.
And with that,
We'll see you Monday. I thought you might come up with a different song. June is busting out all over.
Nope, never heard that one.
Yeah. No, it's a Broadway show.